We got a bit of news regarding UFC welterweight Michael Morales and his record. So Tapology put this out last night. I'm going to read the statement as quickly as I can because I don't want to bore you guys with the details too much. But basically, they claim that Michael Morales actually has a loss on his record. It was, of course, been advertised and has been put out there many times that he's been undefeated. So let's read what Tapology has to say here. And then there's been a bunch of responses to this as well, which I'll get into. But let's start first with the statement here from Tapology. This was 8:13 last night, I believe, Eastern. Update on the Tapology record for welterweight phenom Michael Morales. While Morales has been listed up to this point as undefeated as a professional, we've added one additional professional win and one additional professional loss from the start of his career. We were tipped off and found extensive footage of an Ecuadorian league, Ultimate Pelea, I hope I'm saying that right, which had at least 3 seasons of a reality-style show with fighters in the tournament. Morales competed on the second season in 2017. And Morales was 17 at the time of the qualification fight and 18 at the time of his quarterfinal, a loss. The rules and structures of the fight meet our criteria for professional MMA. Many of the competitors were established professionals, including Ricardo Centeno, who beat him. The Morales loss can be viewed in this video, and Homa Fight actually reposted it too. You clearly see him losing in this fight here. I'll just show you the finish. Again, it's about a 22-second clip, and you can see Michael Morales here in a tough position. He's getting hit on the head, and then he comes out, and it's a loss. You can see he loses here. Michael Morales is right here. He loses. But here's the issue, and we'll go on this a little bit further. Jay Petrie, who works for Sherdog, of course, Sherdog and Tapology kind of rivals. They're both sort of fight record companies. Sherdog Fight Finder will not be changing the professional record of UFC fighter Michael Morales. We've reviewed the Ultima Pelea reality series 2 years ago, and it was determined that these tape-delayed matches would not be marked as pro. More on this tomorrow on Sherdog, and we'll kind of wait and see what's going on. We also have another Twitter user saying, I just spoke with the producer of the reality show, the same one that they're referring to with this fight. He told me there were over 150 fights, and they were all exhibitions. He says this doesn't understand how this all of a sudden is being added to fighter records, namely to Michael Morales' record. We'll go a little bit further. We got a journalist who covers sort of Latin America here. He says, unfair. Michael Morales lost his second fight in a reality show when he was 18. The fight has always been thought of as an exhibition, and the show clearly uses the tough format. There was not a full commission then, barely one now. This ignores the nature of Latin American MMA. And then he also makes this claim that it feels like a certain manager is trying to muddle things up with Michael Morales so his clients fight each other instead of his client defending against Michael. Wonder who he could be referring to. Maybe the manager who manages the welterweight champion. I'm not sure. I don't know if this is, that's what he's saying. I'm not claiming any of this, by the way. Then we got Patricio Pitbull's manager chiming in here. I have a lot of respect for. Matthias is one of the best managers in the sport right now. He says, this sums up Tapology's stance to many things. They've arbitrarily flagged some flights in Brazil as invalid. They've also made a bunch of demands to add fights that for some isn't even possible. So there's always been a little, listen, Tapology, just on a personal note, I know a few people that work over there. They're great people. I don't know Steven, who runs Tapology, very well, but there's always a bit of gray area when it comes to records and things like that. So to summarize this up with everything we've kind of read here, this does sound like this fight that Morales participated in was kind of like the Ultimate Fighter, because if you guys remember, and Rodrigo mentions this in his tweet, Ultimate Fighter fights are counted as exhibitions as well, because the format's a little bit different on Ultimate Fighter. Like for example, one that always comes to mind is Bryce Mitchell, who I know has lost obviously a couple fights, number of fights since he's been in the UFC. He's lost 3 fights now, but he lost on the Ultimate Fighter to Brad Katona in 2018. But because this was an exhibition fight, it didn't count on his record, and they kept touting him as undefeated when he fought Ilia Topuria. If you remember, he was 15-0 at the time, but they don't count Ultimate Fighter fights. So if we're going by that criteria, and this is sort of among the same sort of criteria here, that it's an exhibition, then it shouldn't count on his record. I think it's worth mentioning, right? Like, I would always mention Bryce losing to Brad, which, by the way, it's still weird that Bryce Mitchell lost to Brad Katona way back then, because Brad's a bantamweight and Bryce Mitchell's fought at featherweight. But I think it's something worth noting. I kind of agree with Jay here. I don't think it should count on his record because, it's by the looks of it, it was more of an exhibition thing. Right? If it's not like a full MMA fight with like Rodrigo saying here, not a full commission, all this stuff, I don't think it should count. And here's the thing you guys got to remember at the end of the day. Tapology is a third-party tracking record system. This doesn't have any effect on the UFC. In fact, I don't think the UFC is going to look at this and go, oh, well, he lost, so we're going to add it in there. And in fact, I'm pretty sure they're not going to do that because, it's not a good selling point when you've got a guy who's lost a fight as opposed to a guy who's undefeated here. So I think this is kind of cut and dry. I just think this is an exhibition fight that, for whatever reason, they're trying to make it as something professional. And I want to be clear too, like, I do have a lot of respect for Tapology. I think the work they do is great. I use them all the time when it comes to my fight breakdowns and any sort of like fight previews or anything that I do. They are the best platform out there. So, but at the same time, I feel like, you know, I'm in a position as well, just like anyone is, to criticize them. And I think this is something that I just don't think is really necessary to add this on here. One thing I actually think would be better is maybe just put the loss on there, but just put it as exhibition. Why can't they do that? Like, I don't know. They didn't really say, because they say here in the statement, where is it? Let's just read it one more time. The rules and structure of the fights meet our criteria for professional MMA. So I don't know about that. Like, was this a scheduled 3-5 minute round fight? Like, that's where things are a little bit unclear. And again, if you got the promoter coming out and saying that, you know, there were 100, and granted, I don't know this guy very well. He's only got, oh no, he's a fight. Okay. He's a Sherdog guy too. Should probably mention that. So obviously Sherdog feels a certain way, but saying that if he works for Sherdog and this is a guy who works on the Fight Finder, he's probably pretty legit. I'll nothing against Edwin. I don't know this person personally, but listen, if he reached out to the promoter and the promoter's saying, the actual promoter's coming out and saying that this is exhibition and Tapology's not acknowledging that, then I think they're in the wrong here. So like I said, I'm of the belief that Morales is still undefeated. I think the UFC is too. This isn't much of a controversy because, again, at the end of the day, the UFC is not going to just put a loss on his record that just came out of nowhere. They might, but I think there's a very small chance of that happening. It really doesn't benefit anyone. And listen, the UFC, I mean, we've seen some of the matchmaking recently. We've seen some of the way they're doing business. They're more concerned about the entertainment side of things than they are at merit. I doubt they go in here and, you know, change things up. I mean, they didn't even change up. They were unsuccessful in changing John Jones's record, right? Because he technically has a loss to Matt Hamill, even though it should have been a no contest. So, yeah, that's something interesting here. And you look at some of the replies here. If it's not an exhibition, but what makes it professional? First, the amateur versus pro distinction is also widely problematic around the world. Fighters regularly try to retroactively claim their losses were amateur. Internationally, fighters regularly go back and forth from pro to amateur. It's complete mess. That said, the one thing they don't address here, though, is it exhibition or is it not exhibition? Because if the promoter's saying exhibition, I'm not saying that. I do wonder why Tapology, or maybe they have, I'm guessing they haven't. Why did they not reach out to the promoter? So, yeah, very interesting here with Tapology. So something to keep in mind. Like I said, I don't think, you know, the majority of the responses are on Morales' side here saying, hey, it shouldn't be. I'm hearing it was a reality show similar to Tough. It was not sanctioned by a body, 2-round fight. I wouldn't call Tapology that word, but yeah, I can understand people being upset here. So we'll see. Something to keep an eye on. But like I said, my prediction for this is that nothing is going to happen with the UFC because, again, Tapology doesn't work with the UFC. They're not part of the UFC. They're a third-party tracking system. And I'll say it again. I think they're the best in the business. I don't want people going after Tapology for me making this video, but it's something worth noting because this is all in the news right now. And thankfully, it's actual fight news as opposed to other things which we've seen in the news a lot over this last month. January 24th can't come soon enough. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you believe Morales should have a loss on his record? Do you believe that he shouldn't? Let me know. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.